Joining us live now here in the studio, business reporter Edward Boyd. Ed, good morning to you.
Morning.
It's all about the package this week, where the money is going to be going out of Canberra anyway. Where do you see it going?
Look, I think firstly the government needs to assist businesses, so perhaps we might see some short-term tax breaks for business, potentially payroll tax assistance for business as well. That's probably the primary one at the moment. It needs to go to businesses that are hurting the most from this coronavirus. So you look at the tourism sector, the travel sector in particular, are feeling it particularly hard right now. So I see them being the main beneficiary at this stage of early in the week.
Yeah, to give these businesses a bit of a breather, aren't they, while they, struggling to pay their workers with no tourists coming in, for example, but, they've still got to pay tax bills and other expenses that are ongoing. There's been a number of things also bubbling around about also wanting to stimulate the broader economy and get people spending money without, putting actual checks into their bank accounts. So one idea that has been floated, economists say a one-off increase in Newstart is actually going to be one of those things that gets that cash flowing pretty quickly. Chris Bowen gave an indication that Labor might be on board with that yesterday. Can you see the government going down that path, and what's the kind of economic argument for it?
Look, potentially that could be a really good way to go as well. There's obviously a lot of casual workers out there in the economy, and if they potentially need to self-isolate for 14 days, if they do come down with the coronavirus, they're not going to get paid over that period of time, and they won't be putting any money back into the economy over that 2-week period. So if there is this short-term Newstart allowance that is given potentially to these casual workers, it will help the economy and it'll help get some money back in here. Obviously, economic growth just came in last week at 0.5% growth for the December quarter, and we're predicted to see negative growth the next quarter, which is why the government really needs this stimulus to come in as soon as possible.
The Minister said on the weekend that they're probably not going to look at an increase in Newstart for this package. That's more likely to come in the budget later on in the year. Which might or might not answer that question. I know that Bowen was still keen on that to happen at whatever point anyway. But there does seem to be a lot more interest around helping businesses and helping workers too, particularly not full-time staff, but your casual workers who are probably going to lose out a fair bit here. How significant could that be on the economy? I mean, I was reading this morning that Flight Centre is going to be asking people to cut back shifts from 5 days a week to 4 days a week, which means they're going to be losing money as well.
Look, it's very significant for the economy.
And that'll be happening, I'm sure, beyond just Flight Centre.
Clearly, there's hundreds of businesses out there do employ casual workers, and a lot of them may stop getting the call up to come in week to week because companies simply cannot afford to pay. They're bleeding cash right now. Lots of businesses are hurting. They're in trouble. This stimulus is speculated to be about $5 to $10 billion. I guess the question is that actually going to be enough money to get the economy where it needs to be? Kevin Rudd's first stimulus was $10 billion, which was announced in the October 2008, and then a few months later, him and the former Treasurer Wayne Swan announced a $42 billion stimulus to really much larger.
Well, the checks were the first one. That was the $10 billion measure, as I remember it, and it was a little while ago now. But look, as you say, there's 3.3 million casual workers in this country, so there's a big problem there economically, and for those people individually. What it comes down to is, I think, when we see this announcement today. This week, we are going to see something that won't be set and forget. So whatever the figure is, and I think it'll be more around the $10 billion mark, that will still be scalable. So there could be a lot more money spent down the track, and it's all about how this quickly gets circulating in the economy, because you've got to do it quickly. That's the whole point of stimulus, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. And the government doesn't know how long this is going to last. And the same thing back in the GFC. Kevin Rudd didn't know how long that was going to last as well. So there is a similarity. It's probably about it, because they're different stories, but between the two.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we don't, this coronavirus, until there is a cure found or some sort of end in sight,
18 months away,
we don't know.
The vaccine.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting point that you were making too, Laura, is that these casual workers, right, people need money. And so if you're showing symptoms, there might be a temptation just to not report it because you need the money.
Not only not report it, but also refuse to self-isolate, because then it brings problems for you and your own personal finances, which you can see the argument as well. Also, what needs to happen, in my view, is clearer instructions. Look at this Melbourne doctor, clearer instructions for how people need to treat this virus, where they're coming from and how seriously they need to. I think there's a bit of confusion. That's why we're seeing that panic buying.
I think that's where that... And is this when Christian Porter's laws come into play? The biosecurity,
the biosecurity laws.
If you don't
well, they've not used them before.
Self-isolate, then you can get yourself into some legal trouble.
Well, he was more talking about locking down public areas, like shopping centres, like doctors' surgeries, like things like that. They already do quarantine people at airports as they come in. But busy week for you.
Very busy.
We moved away from...
very busy week for you.
Just there, but anyway, we'll come back to you. Thanks very much, Ed.
Thank you.
Well,